Hello, BookTube. All right, we're going to continue with our library tour. We're doing the skinny bookcase, and I'm figuring maybe we can do 2 shelves at a time instead of dragging this thing out forever because we have a lot more books to go through, a lot more. So I'm going to try and get 2 shelves done, and the first of the 2 shelves looks like it's entirely fiction. And these aren't big shelves at all. And the first one is the paperback of Oliver Loving. This is by Stefan Merrill Block, and it's about a boy who's in a coma as a result of a school shooting. And there's no hope that he's ever going to come out of that coma, but in the course of this novel, an innovative neurological treatment surfaces that may allow him to communicate from that coma, and the book alternates. It goes into his existence in that smallest of all possible worlds, and I thought it was just amazingly beautifully done. And I gave away my hardcover, I think, to one of you. So I was very happy to have the trade paperback, on which I am not blurbed, but sometimes I don't mind. This next one is bitterly topical. This is by Fletcher Nepple, and this is Night at Camp David. And the advance copy here has what would happen if the President of the United States went stark raving mad. And that's what this was from the same author that did 7 Days in May. What I wouldn't give if Vintage brought out 7 Days in May in a lovely edition like this. Yeah, there you go. 7 Days in May is about an abortive military takeover of the United States, and this is about a president who goes insane. This came out in 1965, so well before the advent of Richard Nixon, and a whole generation before the advent of Donald Trump. And Richard Nixon's paranoia and alcoholism became so exaggerated when he was in the White House that by the end, in his worst moments, late at night, you could say that the president was stark raving mad, that he was unhinged. And Donald Trump has been in cognitive decline for 15 years, and now is what is colloquially known as a basket case. He can't read, he can't listen, he doesn't remember when he's told the same story, and he is a compulsive geyser of lies, just a geyser of them, in the way that kind of sort of your crazy old great uncle is a geyser of lies, where you're not even sure how many of them he knows are lies, but one way or another it's those are the 2 points. Those are the 2 points. This was talked about enormously when Nixon was in office and when he was getting out of office, and it's now reprinted by a major U.S. publisher for the same reason, for the same largely unspoken reason. Kind of a rotten reason to get a high quality reprint of an author that I think should be back in print, but I was happy to see it anyway. Not so much for the real world reasons that are provoking it, but for seeing reprints of any kind. I think the reprint culture ought to be much stronger in this country than it is, even though it is fairly strong, as we'll see. I think there are a couple more reprints in here on this shelf. This next one is Less by Andrew Sean Greer, which surprised everyone by winning the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And I think part of the reason that surprised people, its fans were surprised, but also book snobs all over the English-speaking world were surprised. And the surprise came from the same place, which is that this is an immediately accessible and completely enjoyable novel. And we have reached a point with major literary prizes and subverting expectations and suborning snobbery where we don't expect that. We don't expect that a book that we actually read and liked will ever win a major literary award. And when this one did, there were all sorts of think pieces all over the literary landscape about how this marks the end of civilization, from people who were completely silent when an illiterate cokehead won the Nobel Prize for Literature. they had nothing to say about that at all. But with this, it was fair game. It's tremendously enjoyable and so energetically written on every page, just no fat whatsoever, and genuinely funny, and by the end, genuinely moving, about a gone to seed novelist who decides to avoid his ex-boyfriend's wedding by just accepting every speaking tour that comes his way. And there are a lot of them, and some of them are shady and dodgy, and some of them he has no right to attend. And it ends up being a quest novel. in a very neat and subversive way. I liked it a lot. I don't expect that it's like we'll be nominated again for the Pulitzer Prize, much less win. I think I can guess what this year's Pulitzer Prize for fiction will be. I think I can guess what most of the other major awards will be. I could certainly generate a long list of 10 books and be right with most of them for what's going to be nominated. This year and every year henceforth are going to be just cyclones of quote-unquote intersectionality, and no award will ever be given for a book like this ever again. Andrew Sean Greer, this is a gay novel, but that doesn't matter. Gay is mainstream now. Andrew Sean Greer is white and cis, and so he will never be in the running for a novel again. I can pretty much draw up a list of the books that will be given serious consideration for all the major Western literary awards in the next year. And it will be entirely woke virtue signaling. That's all that it will be. And how many of those boxes can you check off at the same time? So, yes, you are trans, but are you from sub-Saharan Africa? Okay, yes, you're trans and from sub-Saharan Africa, but are you an actual amputee? All right, well, okay, you're a trans from sub-Saharan Africa and you're an amputee, but did you lose your limb with an IED? And if you did, was it planted by a white American soldier? Because I'm afraid your book's just not good enough, literarily speaking, if that IED was not planted by a white American. You're not helping anything to have your leg blown off by a fellow African. Or nonsense like that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong. I always think the worst about award seasons. They didn't used to. But then the Nobel started getting weird. About 10 years ago, it started getting weird. It started, the judges for the Nobel started saying, well, I mean, it's award night and we don't have a nominee. We don't have a winner. What are we going to do? Hey, you. And then they pull the wash lady out of the closet who's, rinsing her mops for the night shift, and they say, would you like to win the Nobel Prize in Literature? I just wrung a chicken. I guess. Once the Nobel started getting weird, I started getting worried, and since then, all awards have... This was weird. This was an anomaly. I don't think we will ever see it happen again. But we'll see. We'll be watching the literary awards together, and we'll see. Okay, this next one is a movie cover, but it's a rare good movie cover. Who are those people on the cover? I don't think I ever saw this movie. And the print is way too small for me to see who that is. But this is the movie cover version of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And the reason I kept it, I have other copies of this book. The reason I kept this is because it's rare for a movie cover to not be an insult, aesthetically speaking. This is okay. I would take this if it had been the original cover. And this is just a fantastic novel about the occupation of the Guernsey, of the Channel Islands during World War II by the Nazis. And that's the broader term, but in the smaller terms and in the far more focused term, it's about reading. The Literary Society alluded to in the title is not just a dodge to pass messages under the nose of the Nazis. It also becomes a vessel by which reading can save a lot of people, even if it doesn't save their lives. I was astonished when I read it the first time, and this is going on a while ago. But can you imagine something like this winning the Pulitzer Prize? No way, it would never happen. This is from 2009 or 2008, so that's a long time ago. That's 10 years ago, and I loved it. I've read it a couple of times since then, and I give it to people. People who say, any novel written in the last 50 years or the last 20 years is not going to interest me at all. They're all bad. Or people who say, even the slightest bit of historical fiction, and it's not for me. I tell them, you're wrong about that. Rules like that are always wrong, and in this case, you're wrong about both of those. I can suggest to you a book that is both contemporary and a historical novel, and you will love it. This isn't the only one that I could do that for. There are plenty of others. Robert Harris's Pompeii comes to mind. Show me a reader that will fail with. It's not possible. Okay, all right, this next one is paperback by Jean Hanf Korelitz called The Devil and Webster. I think the shallow reason that I kept this is because the paperback cover is so much nicer than the hardcover, than the dust jacket on the hardcover. I think that's the reason I kept it, although I also liked it. It's a campus novel about a firebrand student protester on a very progressive campus who starts to get a taste of real power, starts to become a genuine problem for the university, and also for the college president, who considered herself to be a friend of, an ally of progressives. And I liked it for that, of course, for the tapping into the tensions that are on college campuses all across America, but also for the characterization of the two main characters. I thought they were really well done. Okay, we have seen this one already. this is See What I Have Done, Sarah Schmidt's novel about the Lizzie Borden murders, the life that Lizzie Borden led, the life that her parents led, the tensions and the heat leading up to the murders. I thought it was really effective. I don't, of course, need 2 copies, and I think we saw an advance copy, an ARC of this just the other day on the same wall. So, but that's what I like about these library tours, is that they are a very good way of me winnowing the library in addition to just going through it. Okay, all right. This one is by the writing team called Lars Kepler. This is a Juna Linna novel. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. This is Scandinavian fiction, and it's The Sandman, and it's about the hunt for a serial killer, and it's very, very vivid, absurdly so, cartoonishly so, but still. From the very first scene, there's an extended first scene that it's totally gimmicky. But if you can stop reading, I don't think you can. And that largely holds true throughout the book. And any of you authors out there will know that's extremely hard to maintain. It really is. And this book manages to do it, and so did the next one. The next one, I think, was called Stalker, and it was also just terrific, even though if you take a mental step back, once you've closed the book, you take a mental step back, then you'll start to list off, all right, well, that wouldn't happen. Okay, that was silly. All right, that's absurd. But the important thing is you don't really feel like doing that while you're reading the book, which makes it a success, in my opinion. Okay, here's another great re-release. This is Edgar Wallace and Miriam Cooper. This is a novelization, really, a novel sparked by a movie, but nobody remembers that. And it's King Kong. This is by Modern Library, I think. Yeah, Modern Library. Will you look at that cover design? That is just incredible. That's just incredible. I mean, this cover design is really good too. Where you have to turn the page to get that. But this is just brilliant. It's just brilliant. And I'd talk about a cheesy novel, but still, I kept it, of course. I don't think I reread this paperback re-release, but when I get in the mood for a King Kong, I will definitely read this. And now I have the edition that I want, that I'll always want. Okay, the last 2 on this shelf are romances. A couple of years ago, I started getting romances in the mail with a much greater degree of regularity than I ever had before, and that is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. And this one is Jana McGregor. This is The Good, the Bad, and the Duke, one of the Caversham Heiress's novels. And the other one is The Duke I Once Knew by Olivia Drake. And these are trade paperbacks of books that came out as mass markets. So, this was just the form that the advance copies come in, and I still do get them. Like, for instance, this ought to be right with them. This is the first Earl I see tonight, also in a trade paperback of a book that came out in mass market. So, I should put that with those. I kind of like it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my mass market paperbacks. I wish I got a lot of them in the mail. I don't get any Star Trek in the mail, for instance, what I wouldn't give to have some sort of energetic contact for pocketbooks that would get me Star Trek novels. And I also love romances in mass market as well, but something about getting them in trade paperback is just appealing. And that is, we are at 14 minutes, and we just did one shelf. So I'm going to try to do the second shelf, because it doesn't have as many books on it, and we'll see if we can get through it. And the first one is this great, big, wonderful anthology by P.G. Wodehouse, The World of Jeeves, which has all sorts of short stories. I think it has a whole novel in here. The only question that I have about this book is, what is it doing out here? Because this is a keeper. This is every once in a while, especially in the summer, one yearns for Wodehouse, and all the rest of my Wodehouse is in the other room, where the keepers are. And this is a keeper, so I don't know what it's doing out here. Okay, same thing for this one. I have my Penguin Classic wall. Those of you I'm sure you've seen my Penguin Classic wall, and it's as many classics as I can get my hands on. I love Penguin Classics as a classic reprint line, but I often think of that wall, those Penguin Classics, for the classics that I really love. I think of that the Penguin as sort of a stopgap. I want to have the Penguin because I want a wall of classics that I can just go to, but I also want to keep an eye out for other editions, because Penguin translations, especially of verse, can sometimes be a little on the humdrum side, and I want the Penguin version anyway as sort of a baseline, and then move on to get the non-Penguin version that I really want of the book, if that makes any sense at all. And this is a perfect example of that. This is Sarah Rudin's translation of St. Augustine's Confessions, which I have the Confessions in the Penguin Classic, but I wanted this as well. She was the first woman ever to translate the whole of the Confessions into English, and I loved it. I loved her translation. I think I might have reviewed it, but I don't think I've ever seen this came out in 2018, I think, or 2017. I don't think I've ever seen a paperback of this thing. But it also belongs in the other room. The other room is for not only the Wall of Penguins, but also for all of the editions of classics that I also have as Penguins that are non-Penguin editions, big, illustrated, fully annotated, that sort of thing. It's the sort of thing that doesn't make it to Penguin. So this belongs there as well. Okay, all right. I don't know if this belongs in the keeper room, but all of my Conan stuff belongs together. I should have all of that together. This is Red Nails. This is a collection of Robert E. Howard stories in a hardcover that I found it and cheap, and I reinforced it. And it's nice sometimes to pull down a hardcover of Conan with a lurid cover and just read a couple of stories. But all of my Conan stuff should be together, and it's not. And that leads to hunts at 11:30 at night, which is not good. All right. Oh, this next one. Oh boy, I don't think there are many Byron fans out there. I am certainly the world's biggest Byron fan. If you are a Byron fan, or if you're a fan just of biography in general, especially unconventional, this is a book you have to hunt down and find. This is by Peter Quennell. We saw him doing biographies of Byron over on the biography shelf, and this is called Byron: A Self-Portrait in His Own Words, a hefty volume. In which Quennell goes through all the letters, testimonials, all that sort of thing, everything that he can for Byron, and stitches it all together into an almost autobiography, into almost something that Byron might have written himself. Of course, he did write his own memoirs, and they were destroyed, so we don't know what was in them. But as far as piecing together a Byron biography from his own writings, it couldn't be done any better than this. This is just tremendous. Doesn't belong out here. I think I only have one copy, so it belongs in the other room. Okay, this is another reprint, and also very attractive. The decal edges and the French flaps. This is Charles Portis's novel True Grit. This is a reprint on its 50th anniversary edition. A terrific Western novel, one of the great Western novels, about a young girl who hires a one-eyed old peace officer to hunt down the men who killed her father. And she tells the story, and it is widely recognized. Well, it's of course the best thing that Portis ever wrote, but it's widely recognized, at least among its cultist fans, as an American classic, a true American classic. So it was a source of joy to me to see a publisher not only reprint it, noticing the 50th anniversary, but also to do it in such a nice format. I had a mass market of True Grit that I just got rid of, because this is the edition that will work just fine for me forever. Okay, this next one is also a reprint. This is a classic. This is from Vintage. This is one of their white classics. This is Parade's End by Ford Maddox Ford. 4 slim novels interlinked novels that he wrote about World War I and its aftermath, the people who went to fight it, that I love. I think it's fantastic, and this is the prettiest edition that I've ever found. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about. I have Parade's End as a Penguin Classic, but I got this as well, and I don't mind keeping 2 editions like that. One that's a Penguin Classic that I get at least as much for the introduction and the notes as I do for the text itself, and then another that checks all the other boxes that I want. Like, for instance, a translator who's too expensive for Penguin, even if the publisher left off Saint on Augustine, or you know, something like this, which is, you know, it's a fantastic book, but it's not a classic of literature. So it'd be a stretch for Penguin to redo it. I'm perfectly happy having duplicates like that. That kind of duplicate I don't mind at all. And then the last book on the shelf. So we did a fairly orderly video of 2 shelves. So we'll try and do that next time as well. And this one doesn't belong here. Just flat out doesn't belong here. This is Passions of the Mind by A.S. Byatt, the author of Possession. A lot of you will have read Possession. This is literary essays of hers. They're fantastic, but you can tell right from that description that this belongs. I have 2 bookcases in the other room that are devoted to literary essays. And what's the point of doing that if one or more of them are going to be elsewhere? So this needs to be, I won't even put it back on the shelf. It needs to be moved to that other bookcase. And I maybe need to find out why I have this out here. Maybe I got a hardcover of Passions of the Mind and haven't sent it out to anybody yet. So, but anyway, those are the next 2 shelves of this library tour. So we'll move on. We'll either do 1 shelf or 2 shelves next time until we're done with this skinny bookcase. And then we're going to keep going all the way around this room just in order. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.